Welcome to the Kindling Spirit podcast.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to a new season of podcasting for us. What the podcast formerly known as Mystical Musings. We're doing a little updating, a little rebranding. A couple of reasons. There were like 5 or 6 other podcasts with the name Mystical Musings, and we kind of like not being like everybody else and doing things a little bit different. And we also felt like Mystical Musings didn't quite capture the depth of what we want to bring in these episodes. We really want to bring material that's going to stimulate you to look deeply inside and hopefully foster and cultivate a creative spirit. So this podcast is now called the Kindling Spirit podcast.
Yay. Yeah. Mystical Musings was nice because it does give the idea that there's levity to a lot of this work, but it didn't afford this idea that there's also depth to it necessarily. And we want to bring both in this. And Kindling Spirit seems totally appropriate considering it's creative spirit collaborative. So
yeah, much more aligned with the work you and I are doing together.
Yeah, I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to kindle people's spirits. For sure.
Totally. So for anybody who's just joining us for the first time, we are your hosts. My name is Brenton, and I'm part of the collaborative of Creative Spirit Collaborative, where I met my co-host Rachelle here.
Yeah, and I'm Rachelle, and I'm the founder of Creative Spirit Collaborative, and really happy to be here and be a part of this. And this podcast evolved with Brenton and I just coming together and having conversations and pulling out some pretty cool stuff shared between our years of experience and, with different trainings and kind of dabbling in the mystical and in the spiritual. So
yeah, it's kind of fun to think about the idea that you and I probably have at least 50 years of combined training and experience with this world. So half of a century of wisdom coming to you.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, different way to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, we hope to bring you, you could think about it different ways. Yoga off the mat, real applied spirituality, mental health outside of the box. There's a lot of things that we kind of cover with our esoteric backgrounds together. But today we really work with people in the mental health field and in the spiritual coaching field. And when we do that with individuals and groups, we're really wanting to, like I mentioned earlier, just kind of get the word out a little bit broader and a wider reach so that we hopefully stimulate more people to pause, to ask some of these deep questions that we're going to explore together, and to maybe make a difference in this world in ways that they previously didn't think that they could.
Yeah, definitely. We're really wanting this to be real and applicable to, everyday life, modern society, and kind of filtering some of those ancient teachings into how do we live this today. And like you said, bringing the elemental, bringing yoga background, bringing mental health, bringing the 5 pillars in, and it's all kind of wound up in this really cool little disco ball like you have.
Yeah, love that. Yeah. So for those of you who are just catching us in whatever your favorite podcast platform is, we know this is audio, but for those of you who enjoy what you're hearing and you want a little bit deeper experience with us or to sit with us, we do have a Patreon, and we offer a visual and video version of this podcast recording. So if you want to see our beautiful mugs, you get an opportunity to do so moving forward.
And the disco ball.
And the disco ball behind me, for sure. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I guess, Rachelle, before we jump into what we talk about, I kind of just want to create space so that anybody listening can pause for just a second and maybe check in with themselves and ask that question, am I okay right now? Because there's a lot of just kind of craziness going on, particularly in this country, in the United States, but in the world at large, because we're all connected. And I think that there's a lot that we're all being affected by, that it's it's hard to express, it's hard to work with, it's hard to describe because it feels very subtle and psychological in this kind of warfare that we're in now. So before we do anything else, it just feels kind of weird to jump into business as normal without at least acknowledging some of this experience we're having inside and out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that'll be, in some ways, the theme of the whole podcast, certainly today, and maybe for the foreseeable future, is like, what's really going on in our world and how are we tending to it? And how do we maintain a connection to our own spirit, our own vitality when there's so much suffering in the world and violence and chaos and uncertainty and tragedy and, all of this stuff? One of the things that I think I said to you recently is, yeah, talking with clients about this and just other practitioners, it's just particularly this week, and this is for those of you that listen later, this is a few days after the murder of Preddy. And so just like, I don't know, 2 or 3 days, I was feeling very heavy, just very lethargic. And yeah, just this kind of like background grief. And sort of like, what's going on with me? Why am I feeling this way? And then, it's like I snap out of it. And it's like, oh, I actually witnessed a murder on, the internet of somebody that, it's just like far out. It wasn't a movie. And I realized at that moment how deeply it impacted me, how deeply it impacts us. Like just, and the world yet pushes us to move on, to keep going, acting as if nothing's happening. So yeah, it's a really important question to just pause and say, like, where are we? What's happening? What's not just happening inside of us, but what's happening in the environment? What's happening in the human world? All of these layers that are beyond just the individual to look at.
Yeah, very much. What are the things that are happening that are influencing me that may not be directly in my field or directly in my life?
Mhm.
I actually just read this article this morning on Vox that's based on, I believe, Frankel's work back in the 1930s, where he talked about the dual state that people experienced during fascism.
Mm.
And the idea is that there's this sneaky kind of thing that they, the powers want to happen, which is that life largely remains unchanged for most of us. We keep going to work, we keep eating, we keep buying the things we need to live, right? And that's the way that they want it because everything seems like it's normal until it's not. And then all of a sudden, in these times and these kind of situations that we're in now, that normalcy can crack and shatter in an instant because the protections that we normally have that guarantee us rights and freedoms and that kind of thing are taken away. And so then all of a sudden, we slide from this one extreme of everything is fine. I'm going to the grocery store. I'm going to work to, oh, somebody I know and love is getting killed in the street next to me because they were protesting.
Right.
And it's like that contrast in that extreme is it's a long way to travel between those two sides of that pendulum swing,
Yeah. Yeah, that's really potent. Thanks for bringing in Viktor Frankl. That's a really relevant voice here, I think, in this time. And without trying to go into too much politics, I think this piece of like in some ways, I'm going to say slow erosion of our rights, but in some ways, it hasn't been all of that slow. And when there's so much urgency and violence and tragedy, again, suffering, and yet our rights are eroding away, we get to this sometimes unconscious place of hopelessness, right? It's like not only are people being killed in the streets, but now they're talking about arresting people who are protesting. So all of a sudden, freedom of speech is no longer available. It's only available to those in power who are, billionaire white cis het men. And because the process keeps going, that like our living is largely unchanged. There's this sort of amnesia or this forgetting that we're losing these things. And like you said, that's the way it's wanted. So the question is, right, we can go deep into politics if we want to, and there's a place for that for sure. But the process that we're really looking at is, how do we care for ourselves during all of this? And some of it is just like being really real. Here we are. I can't come to this and pretend that everything's okay and I have all the answers and I'm going to be spiritual and transcend it all. That's not happening.
Yeah, and even, I mean, I love that quote from Thich Nhat Hanh that says, when the bombs start falling, you have to leave the meditation hall."
Mm,
And that's, that's kind of, that's what I hear you saying, and that's what really we want to talk about, right? Because behind your words, I hear, like, where is kind of the intersection between authenticity and social justice?
mhm.
So where do my own needs meet the needs of everyone? Because there's a lot more overlap than I think that we are willing to admit and look at in the States. And
Mhm.
it shows up in little ways, like we don't really know where our food comes from. We don't know who grows it, who manufactures it, all the steps in between. There's just kind of this aloofness there that kind of permeates the rest of our society that we're kind of reckoning with right now.
Yeah.
So as these kind of powers outside of us rise, and one of the things that you mentioned is, like, literally our right to use our voice is starting to be diminished, right? So then that begs the question, then how do we find our own voice when it seems like things outside of us are telling us to be quiet?
Right, and this is coming hard and fast. So please excuse me if it's jumbled, right? But one of the things that I want to mention is, here's a pin for applied meditation, and this goes back to the quote that you said about Thich Nhat Hanh. When the bombs start dropping, you have to come out of the meditation hall. This is where we take our practice, whatever it is, into the world. We take it into brothers and sisters and family members and friends who are, chosen, who are in the streets. I'm not talking about biological family members. I'm talking about everybody. I'm talking about the earth. And we take our practice there. We take our heart there. We take the kindling spirit there. And that's the moment of meditation. Right. So that's part of it. And then there's this piece around authenticity. And one of the things that came up for me when we're looking at this, and this is particularly relevant to social justice, is like, um, at what level are we gauging our authenticity? Right. Years ago, when I was kind of looking at, doing a lot of yoga study, I would get confused of like, well, where is truth coming from? Is it coming from my mind and my conditioned experience? Is it coming from my heart or my emotions? Is it coming from my spirit? And I think if we look really deeply and we're connected to our spirit, we will see that probably a majority of descendants of colonialism and settlers and that kind of thing have a ways to go to align our actions with our authenticity. Why? Because it's fucking scary and we haven't practiced it and we haven't learned it. Yeah, we haven't learned how to be out in warfare like many other nations have on a day-to-day basis. Like Rep, what is her name? I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher that. Ilan Omar.
Hmm.
She was attacked and she says, I come from a place of war. That's nothing. I can take it. A lot of people, myself included, we come from a place of privilege, right? And so we have to start to look at that. I'm just going off right now, but I was recently in this training for monitoring ICE. And one of the things they said is like, go to a place where Latinos congregate, where day laborers are, to be a presence in support. Why don't we do that? Because it's scary. There's language barriers, there's cultural barriers, and now in the world, there's like a risk to our lives if we do that. And this touches into community too. Why don't we engage in community? We haven't learned it. It's uncomfortable. Ooh, you have a different perspective than I do. I don't want to deal with that. That's too much. I don't want to learn how to communicate better. I don't want to make compromises. I don't want to learn your way of being, those types of things. But if we look deeply enough, if we look at our authentic spirit, we see that there's mass vitality in being able to face shadow.
Mm.
I'll pause there.
Yeah, God, there's two different places I want to go with this, because the very last thing you said, like, there really is, that old Woody Guthrie song, "This land is your land, this land is my land." It's like, what I hear in that is there is so much elemental space on just this planet alone for everybody to have their original, unique, authentic being, to have their desires fulfilled, to have their purpose fulfilled, right? To think for themselves, to reason, do, and act, and like live a fulfilling life. But we have this idea that there's not enough. There's not enough time, there's not enough space, there's not enough resources, all of these things. And it's like, we've gotten ourselves into this tizzy of misalignment with the planet itself, and that's evidence, in all these different places.
Yeah.
But something that you mentioned that I want to speak to is, it's the yogic principle of satya, of truthfulness. And
Mm.
I think that, there's this is an important aspect of what we're talking about right now, with authenticity and with social justice, and really in supporting people standing up for their truth, right? And it begs that question, well, where are there places where my truth is beneficial for others, but are there also places where my truth right now is not, it's harmful to other people? And that's the kind of thing I think I want to explore, and what we need to explore as a country is, where does personal truth intersect with universal truth? Because this is an example, right, where my partner and I currently live in Texas. We're in the South down here. We live in an environment where Fox News is on all the time. And so for some of these family and friends in our vicinity, their truth is currently based on all of the information that's being bombarded into their brains, right? But what I hear you saying is that if we are willing to listen deep enough, then there's a deeper truth to be uncovered that's beyond my roles, my identities, my judgments, the temporary parts of me and my upbringing that says I need to be a racist bastard because that's what's right. Like all of these things. Because the more deeply that I go with my own truth, the more it's revealed to me that I don't know shit, and that I am connected with everything and everyone on this planet. So
Yeah.
who am I to try to make decisions otherwise?
Right. I mean, there's so many ways that we're all different from each other. So who's to say what's right for each person, And it's often described, what you're speaking to is this idea of humanity. Like, let's see the humanity in each other. But I'm going to say, let's see the beingness in each other. Because if we use the word humanity, first of all, it kind of gets numbed out because it's used a lot. And second of all, it doesn't take into account, the rights of nature, the rights of animals, all of that stuff. So let's see the aliveness, the beingness in each other. It's like, I don't need you to think the way that I do and see the way that I do and have lived the life that I have lived. But I can see that because you're here in front of me, because you exist, you deserve. Here we are back in, the yamas and niyamas. You deserve compassion, benevolence, right? And satya and ahimsa are right there at the beginning, in some ways, of existence. Like, can we find a softening and opening of, compassion, benevolence?
Yeah, in ways that don't require me avoiding things until they catastrophically happen to me for me to finally change and respond.
Yeah.
And I think that that's, in my mind, it's a life skill called reasoning. Like, can I draw upon memory in a productive way so I don't repeat the same things over and over again, but then also continue to imagine something greater and move toward it. But like you mentioned in the beginning, we've forgotten that this country was based on genocide. We've forgotten that we're basically reckoning with years of outsourcing commercialism, right? We've forgotten all of these things. And now, speaking of yogic principles, we're in this santosha place where we have to like really move into this place of deep acceptance. And so in that acceptance process, there's going to be things that we realize we have to let go. Like we have to get rid of these things and stop doing these things that are harming us. along the way to adding the things that are more akin to why we're here.
Yeah.
And I mean that as a person, in a personal way, and as a whole population.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to take a pause here because I know that this can be a pretty charged and lively subject. And just maybe we can all just take a moment, and probably almost everybody, maybe billionaires accepted, almost everybody has had at least a little twinge of an experience where they feel like an outsider. Even if it's just like, I don't know, you didn't get the last apple or something, it's like, it just like, oh, just that little, oh, I feel slighted in some way, whether it's from a person or just circumstances or something like that. And then somebody or something, nature included, just offers. It's just like it's just so tender. How tender it is to just feel like, be on the receiving end of like, nobody sees me, I'm not getting my needs met. And then somebody or something just like, here you go. I see you. Even if the words aren't spoken, right? There's just that little sentiment of feeling both the not being seen and then also what it's like to be seen. Like, let's just pause with that for a moment and feel it in our body, in our heart. Like, oh God, nobody understands me. Nobody's protecting me. I don't get what I need. And then just that little shift, something comes. And it's like, oh, I mean, I could take that really far. It's almost like I could drop to my knees and just be like in tears for like, thank you. It's just these little moments. And I think this is part of what kindles spirit in ourselves and in each other. And I want to come back to that because a lot of times when we're stretching ourselves and we're stepping outside of our comfort zone, we're stepping into the stretch zone, not the panic zone, but the stretch zone. It's people think it's painful. And in yoga, there's something called tapas. If you want to hear more about it, check us on our yoga group in a couple of weeks. We'll be on that. But there's something in this, like, when we face adversity, when we face challenges, it actually kindles more spirit in us. It kindles more vitality, especially if we're doing it. We're not just doing it from a place of ego. We're doing it from a place of compassion or benevolence. So I'll pause there.
Yeah, I also hear resilience in that.
Mhm.
And I'm just thinking of like the times where I've experienced EU stress, like EU stress, as
Yeah.
opposed to distress. It's like I become more resilient. My heart gets stronger physically. My nervous system can better respond to things.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many metaphors for this. It's like humans have been shown that they can hold their breath for significant amounts of time underwater, but you have to practice to do it. And they've shown that anybody can learn to do it
Mm-hmm.
if you practice. And so it literally is a stretching of your lungs, and you have to take deeper and deeper breaths and hold it longer and longer. And that shit is uncomfortable to do.
Yeah.
However, anybody that's exercised knows the power of sustaining practice over time and what it does.
Yeah.
And so that's yeah.
Just also relevant to our nervous system. This is how our nervous system works. And, if we look on one end, it's like PTSD, where our nervous system is really not well adapted to any circumstances, but we can slowly build our nervous system to be very adaptive. Again, going back to somebody that's come from a warring nation and it's like, right, that's nothing. That's somebody who's expanded their nervous system. And yeah, it's incredibly powerful and healing to be able to work with and expand our comfort zone.
Yeah. I think that part of the reckoning that we're coming to right now in this country, and why these yogic principles are so beneficial, is that for a while we've, as a society, gotten into this habit of being told what to do, what to think, and who we are. And to live a life of authenticity means that we have to do all of that work instead of other people just spoon feeding it to us.
Mhm.
And that's much more challenging. I mean, anybody who's going through therapy or self-help work, I mean, you know how challenging it is to show up day after day and to continue to like look in the mirror and ask myself those questions. Who am I? Why am I here? Where did I come from? And where am I going? And when society just says, oh, you're just a cog in a machine, you don't have to have big desires, you just have to worry about consuming until you're comfortable, right? And then just keep
Mhm.
doing these things, keep popping out kids so they can do the same thing until you die, and then that's a good life. And it's not to say that that's not a good life, right? And you can't have meaning and purpose and beautiful relationship in there.
Mhm.
However, if we only ever believe that we are whoever other people tell we are, then we never really we never let that fire inside out. There's
Yeah.
never that sense of creative spirit that really comes through, and that we talked about this in a previous episode, that idea that unity is best fulfilled through individuality. It never really gets a chance to come forth.
Yeah, there's a couple pieces there. One, that's one of the benefits of community is actually finding out truly who we are and what our identity is. I think, some of what you spoke to there is like how, I don't know, a large majority of us, for a large majority of my life, that I was conditioned into a certain identity was completely unconscious.
Mm.
I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that I could exist outside of that. Right. And I'm still dismantling that and probably will be for the rest of my life, and yeah, it takes some courage. It takes a diversity of perspectives to even start to know that, right? Because if I look out and I see lots of different ideas and lots of different ways of beings, that starts to give me this information, this wisdom of like, oh, wait, where did that come from? How come you get to be that way and I don't?
Yeah, this is why individual therapy is outdated and why we talk
Mm,
about it all the time, right?
mm,
Because we so easily fall into these echo chambers these days, and the internet and social media do that, and that's a common thing, right? But it's like we kind of take for granted that we can fall into an echo chamber in ourselves, even doing the spiritual self-help work. I can come to the same therapy sessions by myself over and over and just stay in the same loops again and again and again.
right,
However, if I'm in a community that reflects to me not only the issues that I'm having, but reflects to me back the things that I say I want to be and who I want to become. And when I am that way, that is, I mean, it's not only fulfilling, but it makes growth in the change process much more graceful. It's much more supportive. It doesn't feel like, oh, I'm on my own. I have all of this weight on my shoulders and I've got to figure out how to make changes.
right. Yeah. Yeah. This is one of the things that yeah, that's challenging with this traditional Western mode of diagnosis and treatment, honestly. There's nothing in treatment that says be of service and that will be helpful. But it's incredibly helpful because one, it starts to provide meaning, you know, and it shows us that we can stretch ourselves. And a lot of times people say, like, I don't have the money, I don't have the energy, I don't have the time, whatever it is. And then if they have a little inkling of that, all of a sudden there's an unexpected nourishment that comes from being of service. And then we start to get to stretch ourselves and learn and grow and be able to work with and discover our own identity. And yeah, I think in this world of chaos, being able to find that for ourselves is one source of healing. And being able to support that in others is another source of healing for ourselves and them, right?
Yeah, it feels good to help other people.
Period.
And
Uh,
perhaps what greater way to serve other people than to help them, reach the point where they are so abundant in their own health and sense of being that they feel empowered to serve other people too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it touches a special place inside, right? Again, going back to that initial piece, it's like when you know that somebody is lifted up, how does that feel? Right?
Mm.
Pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, that's why I've chosen to do this with my life. I mean, there are a few things more fulfilling than, yeah, watching people just bloom.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
but I mean,
really good description. Yeah. No.
yeah, and it takes a garden, it takes a whole meadow, it takes a forest, it takes a team of pollinators and
Mm,
fungi underneath the soil, right? All of these things that go into blooming, even though our society would have us say, be the strongest, tallest, fastest growing flower, and that'll make you bloom. And it's like, well, maybe not. Maybe I
right.
need to listen instead.
Yeah, and you just touched on something here that's really important that I just want to bring up is like, right, if we go out into nature, we're going to see a diverse ecosystem because that's what thrives. There are monocrops, the logging industry has introduced monocrops of trees and commercial agriculture has also done that, but they have to put a lot of energy into that to sustain it. But if we go into a really untouched natural environment, it's a very diverse ecosystem. And if we see ourselves as one part of the ecosystem or the biosphere, if we start looking at it from that perspective, then we see like, oh, you, them, the tree, the ocean is another part of this ecosystem that has something to contribute that's of value.
Yeah, and now we're getting to those deepest truths of yoga, which is that I am everything that I observe, right? There is no separation.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and let's speak to that a little bit. Right? People say, "Oh, I don't know." It's like, well, okay, you can see directly, like when air is toxic, it directly impacts you. When water is toxic, it directly impacts you. But let's look at people. Okay, we can go biologically and look at how our nervous system was built. We are built with mirror neurons. Those mirror neurons are meant to mirror and teach us and help us learn from others, not just humans, others outside of ourselves. If we're biologically built that way, how can we pretend that what happens out there doesn't happen in here? We're built that way physically, biologically, physiologically. Science has proved it.
Totally. And you don't have to be a highly educated left brain person to really understand that. You just have to be in a room where somebody else that's really angry walks in and then notice what happens in your own body.
Right. Yeah.
It's like there's this innate connection there. And you're right, science has even gone on to prove the much more kind of woo-woo spiritual stuff that when groups of people get together and meditate, they influence crime rates in entire city areas.
Yeah.
So, then it's like all of a
Mhm.
sudden social justice seems like something that's crazy that's not there all the time. If we are so connected and so if our peace and our survival and vitality depend so heavily on each other, so the idea that social justice even has to be labeled as something that we need to even look at or kind of focus on is crazy, because in the natural world we don't call it social justice, we call it symbiosis,
Mhm.
because the natural world takes care of itself. Other animals protect other species from predators. Trees signal each other and other plants with fungal networks. It's like there's this working together, even in times of chaos in the natural world with other beings entirely. It's like this world looks out for each other and itself and everything on it. We just feel like we're this kind of outlier that needs to constantly be reminded, oh, we need to look out for each other. Oh, we need to be connected. Oh, we need to remember that all of this influences everything else.
Right. And just to say that, just to point out here that this is the condition of the Western mind, right? And many indigenous cultures have a different viewpoint. They have this viewpoint that they are part of the fabric of life, as is the deer, as is the tree, as is the river. And we have to remember that. And here again, we're back in this idea of social justice. It happens at many different levels. It's like we have to recognize that our way of knowing, our way of seeing has been limited. It's almost like we step outside of what we've been taught and recognize like, oh, wait, there's something else going on here.
Yeah, see, that's a thing. It's like if Fox News is the only thing that's ever on, then it seems to me like the country's going pretty well, and there's a lot of like enemies of the state out there that need to be locked up. But if I'm getting those other perspectives, it's like I think of this multifaceted diamond and how boring gemstones would be if there was only like a single two-dimensional flat space. But it's like, no, it's the facets that really let light sparkle and that capture light and let it refract and reflect and all those other physics things that I don't fully understand, right? Yeah, that's us.
That's a beautiful image, and I don't know that we can go much further than that, but I will say same thing with a raindrop, like the light comes through it and all of these colors come out. It wouldn't be cool if it was all white.
Right. Oh, wow. Yeah. That needs to be the metaphor for the changes we make as a country.
Yeah.
Rainbow show us. Things would be boring if it was all white all the time.
It's nice because it's easy to see in those ways, right? It's harder to see when it's personal and it's in our brain and in our life. But that's what I love about, nature, is being able to look out and see some of these lessons, and it softens our capability of understanding it.
Mm-hmm. So I want to take us a slightly little different direction, because I think part of what we're faced with our kind of Western predicament right now is the barrier of entry to some of this stuff. It's a barrier to entry to sometimes authenticity, but it's also a barrier to entry to really like kind of doing the individual work we all need to be doing to let this billionaire driven system break down. And what that means is we have to explore this idea of convenience. And you and I have talked about this, but I think that convenience is sometimes a sneaky way that we get caught and trapped into not speaking up, into not being authentic, into not doing the work that we're actually really drawn to be doing. And when I say work, I don't mean like for a living. I mean like you sharing your unique gifts and perspective of life and how to live it, whatever that may be.
Yeah, this place of comfort, or just like, it feels good right here. I don't need to look outside or try anything different. And I think it comes back to privilege there too, right? If everything is sort of provided for us and we're kind of in this cushy environment or this cushy circumstance, it inhibits our ability to look out. It inhibits maybe even our motivation to do something different. And it's interesting too, because I see that you would think, and then this is what the kind of the American dream is built on. If you have enough money, if you have the right size house, if you have the right car, the right number of children, it will be beautiful. And inevitably, what I see in my work with people is I see people like, that have a considerable amount of money, and they come with depression. There's not meaningfulness. They don't have to fight for anything. They don't have to find their own grit inside. They don't have to find their own spirit, because it's just comfortable. It's just convenient. They can just go out and use money. And this is where, kind of capitalism really fails us. It's like, if you have that currency, you can have a comfortable life, but it doesn't mean that you're evolving or growing or healing or finding your true self or finding your authenticity. It just means you can get by in this kind of broken, sick culture.
Yeah. And yogic texts call that Maya, right? They call it the illusory world.
Yeah.
And, I shared this with you yesterday in a conversation that yesterday morning I was standing in the shower and just like looking at the shelves in there and thinking, this is Maya. Like none of this is real. I think that this wall is solid and it's mostly space. And while I'm sitting here in the shower contemplating what is the purpose of a shower wall in human existence, that people are being killed in the street. It's like what is life right now? Right? If all of these things are kind of swirling like that. And I think that that's just kind of speaks to the times right now, right? It's like there's so much happening. And with social media and with the internet, there's so much that's packed into every moment that is like funneled into our nervous system, that's funneled into the gates of our eyes and the gates of our ears. And you mentioned that we're kind of in this new kind of warfare right now, but it's like it is psychological. And so what most of us don't realize is that we're all kind of working with this shell shocked social media type of effect,
Yeah.
because it's not normal for us to watch people just get shot in the street, whether it's in person or it's on a little screen. But there are 10-year-old kids who are like watching people get shot every day, and it's like that's just kind of where we are right now. And we need to kind of unwind that, because that's not authenticity and human being and expression. That's not like really doing the kind of edge work that we need to. That's just kind of sitting back and letting things just kind of, just keep drinking through the fire hose without ever asking, should I take this out of my mouth?
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me think of fear, and I think we probably need to mention fear, because I think that's often what keeps people in a place of comfort and convenience. And there's an illusion that we can, first of all, keep ourselves completely safe. There is some padding, don't get me wrong, there is the padding of privilege, but that doesn't mean that you can't be impacted by life, right? And so, how do we deal with fear? And I don't think either of us are advocating for anybody to do a specific thing, to run out in the street and, um, get in an altercation with ICE. Not certainly defending that action, but to say, like, there is actually something on the other side of stepping towards discomfort in whatever way that you can do it. And this place of authenticity is like, here's a target. The comfort zone's in the center where we spend most of our time. And then there's the stretch zone, right? And then there's the panic zone. And we don't want to put ourselves in the panic zone, but we also don't want to stay in the comfort zone all the time. We want to stretch ourselves. And actually, again, biologically, we need that. Part of what happens in depression sometimes is people are not getting enough stimulus. They're not getting enough meaning. There's not enough opening of the heart. There's not enough kindling of the spirit for people to find contentment in the world, for people to find their own grace. So just wanted to make a mention to fear.
Yeah, I appreciate your mentioning it. Winter is a really good time to work with fear. It's related to the kidneys and the bladder, in Chinese
Yeah.
medicine, and energetically, it's dark and it's cold, and we have millions of years of genetics that are physiologically expressing themselves as it's dark and it's cold, the light and warmth may never return again, we may not survive, right? There's millions of years of evolution in our genetics that is like playing out, and alarms are going off in our brains and bodies while we're scrolling social media in the middle of the winter.
Yeah.
So it's like to just remember, like, we are space apes who have gotten a hold of spectacular technology and are working on catching up. And to just kind of admit that, so that when I wake up and I feel like fucking crazy, like you were talking about, then it's like to remember that it's okay, and that if I'm not feeling that way, that's probably more alarming, and for me to check in there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's part of the authenticity that I think that you and I are speaking to. It's less of the go out with a megaphone and share your opinions, which may be what needs to happen by more of us. But it's much more of, when you wake up in the morning and when you go to sleep at night, are you feeling like you're living the life that you want to live as a human being, and a life that brings joy and compassion and love and fulfillment to your heart and to your belly? And if you're not, are there baby steps that you can start taking in order to make that change?
Yeah, right on. And I would add to that and say that if you're not feeling that, or in any moment you're feeling grief or fear, that's also part of authenticity. That's part of what also gets suppressed. Is, again, there's this machine that's happening that tells us if we feel anything short of like, oh, capitalism is amazing, and we're not in the American dream. There's something wrong with us individually. And, especially now, the way you're talking about social media, it's just funneled direct. It's almost like, a mainline IV, basically. And we're receiving that, and our nervous system is responding. So even if you're not feeling joy, and maybe, you aren't feeling joy right now, probably not, right? It's like, yeah, allow yourself to feel the anger and feel the pain and feel the fear and feel the grief. That is an authentic space. And then what starts to happen is energy, vitality, kindling of the spirit starts to rise up. And then there's something else beyond that.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, because it's one thing to say, well, let's take baby steps in becoming more authentic, but what does that actually look like? And I think for most people, it looks like sharing what's going on with you emotionally without feeling like you need to audit it or worrying about what other people are going to think about it.
Yeah.
Because if we all, I mean, like again, we've talked about this before. I'm so fortunate to work with a group of people like I do at CSC, because I feel very comfortable showing up wherever I am. If I didn't sleep well, if I'm having struggles with family or with relationships, if I am depressed because of the state of the fucking world, I can show up and name that, and there is space for that to be received. And
Right.
there are times where we end up assimilating and integrating and talking about that as a team for a while, but then there are other times where just voicing that is enough for that energy to kind of alleviate, so that I can get back into the spirit kind of work where I'm moved to actually do something.
Yeah. What we're trying to avoid, or trying to prevent, I guess maybe is a better word, in the inauthenticity, is sort of this patina, this numbness, this, like dazed state that we can get in because we're being bombarded with like pushing the speed of social media and the misinformation. I mean, how numbing is it for lies to become truths? That is literally shutting our brain down, and then trying to work while we're grieving and seeing, it's just like, so that in between, like dazed, foggy state, that's where, we want to say, like, hang on, there's actually something going on here. It feels terrible to like dive into grief. And that's the authenticity that we're talking about. It's on both sides. It's on the shadow side, and it's on the light side. And whatever it is that's true for you, great. Allow that to sing from you. But it's that numbness that the machine wants, and that just like sucks our vitality.
It totally does. And that's, I was looking up some of the etymology of the word authenticity, and it's what you're talking about. It's like, it's not only the capacity to be true to oneself, but it's also the capacity to direct oneself.
Mm.
And when I'm numb, it's really hard for me to reach for elemental air, for motion, for direction, for clarity. And so then it's much easier for me to reach into an outside source and just say, what do I need to do with my life right now? And then just
Mhm.
have this external power say, well, why don't you just go do this? It's mindless, it's numb. You don't have to even check in. Go for 8 hours and then come home, and then check out again when you get home and turn on Netflix for 4 hours, right? It's this constant numbing. And then when my authentic light starts to dim because I'm numb all the time, then why the fuck would I want to speak up for somebody else? I can't even speak up for myself. And so social justice dies along with authenticity.
Yeah, and we become automatons.
Oh yeah, yes, whatever that word is. Yeah, yes, shells
Yeah,
like robots. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And authenticity dies, and vitality dies, and this is the source of disease. And then we go to a broken medical program, and we get pills to numb us even more, so that we can continue on as this sort of robotic process where we're not asking questions, we're not expanding our consciousness, or kind of looking at, is this identity something that I actually want to live? We're just a cog in the machine, and that's how the machine wants it, because that makes the machine function, right?
Okay, so let's give people some hope here and some inspiration. Tell me, based on your background, your experience working with others, but also yourself, like where might you suggest that people can start to move into places of discomfort as they work with authenticity with a little bit of grace?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's lots of ways to explore this. Some are paradoxical, right? One in particular is like what we were just talking about. Find a journal, find a friend, find a tree to feel your feels. Period. I mean, that's a good place to start. And to acknowledge that it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you, that you are part of everything. And if you're feeling out of sorts, look around you and see that the world is out of sorts, and that's going to have an impact on you, and that is okay. And that's the first place to start to find change. That's the first place of healing. That's the first place of evolution. Another one, the paradox is like, can you find little tiny places of magic, right? Just tiny. Or gratitude, maybe magic's too strong of a word, or just appreciation. It's like winter here, all the leaves are off, and I walked in my backyard, which is kind of like, it's got a lot of stuff, and it's not like wild nature. And there are just these little chickadees like bouncing around, and I just paused and was like, wow, it's amazing. So just little things that can touch us like that. That's another piece that I would say. I think I have some more, but I'm curious to hear what you have.
Yeah, a couple of things come to my mind. One is just kind of in response to what some of the things that you mentioned. And it's that I've shared it before, that Joe Dispenza quote, that magic really only happens in the realm of the unknown.
Mm,
So
mm,
if I am wanting things to be easier or even happen in a kind of magical way that doesn't require so much work or stress or striving, then maybe the more that I step into the unknown, the more space there is for magic to actually take over there. And
mm.
so this is that, like, that comfort zone, right? If I'm only staying inside my little bubble all the time, then I've taken all of the magic out of it, because it's I know every square inch of it. So there's no
Yeah,
magic.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's a good one.
the other thought that I have is, I think right now what would behoove all of us in this country is to practice listening. And I
Mm.
think that when we practice listening inside,
Deep.
then
I'd like to. Sorry to interrupt.
yeah.
Deep listening, and when I'm talking about this, I often say listening from the heart. It's
Mm,
different than this type of listening. It's listening from the heart.
yeah, thank you. And that's really, that's what I mean. I'm not thinking about my ears as I say this, so I appreciate that. Yeah, listening from deeper places inside of me. And I think it could be the heart, it could be the belly, it could be the
Yeah.
sacrum, it could be the crown, right? All these different places. But listening, listening inside, and by that same token, being willing to ask maybe those uncomfortable questions, like, am I making choices that are fulfilling me? Am I avoiding things that I think would actually make me happy because I'm scared? Right? Am I not
Mm.
saying things because I'm afraid of the repercussions or because of what somebody else is going to think about me? Right? All of these ideas of the ways that we keep ourselves small. And
Mhm.
so, and anyway, when we start to really like listen in those ways, then we start to listen to ourselves in new ways that we maybe have been avoiding. But I think also right now we start to listen to each other, because
Mm.
it's one thing for an entire leadership and media conglomerate to say this group of people is bad and they do these things, and it's another for me to go down the street and talk to somebody and ask them questions and just listen to their story.
Yeah.
Because the more that I connect with individual people, the more my heart opens and the more that I see a kinship and relationship. When I just kind of label everybody as these dumb humans that are all kind of doing these stupid things, then it's real easy for me to close my heart and I stop listening.
Hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for mentioning that one. I really like that. It's like, can we pause and just listen deeply? And that's probably one of the early bases for any other types of change. The other piece that came to mind for me is service. Many years ago, there was this idea of paying it forward, right? Or random acts of kindness is another way it's been kind of shared out in the world. And it's just like, do what you can, just little tiny things, and just notice how it feels inside when you do that. Just tiny, not, I don't want you to get into the stretch zone, or the panic zone. It's just like one grain into the stretch zone of like, what would be sweet, random act of kindness, act of service, and start to see how that feels.
I'm a fan of service. I think service is possibly the key to enlightenment if I had to choose a path. Karma yoga exists for a reason,
Yeah,
because
sure.
the action of service literally is heart and crown exploding. It's just,
Right.
there are a few things that really do that. I think I've shared this story before too, but when I got to go to the Parliament of the World's Religions back in 2016, I got to hang out with thousands and thousands of people from all over the world, from all of these different spiritual walks of life.
Mm,
And every day, the Sikhs would host langar, and langar
mm,
is, it's this. They literally every day in their temples they cook and provide lunch for free for the impoverished in the population. And
mm,
I believe it's Amritsar Temple in India. They feed like 10,000 or 100,000 people a day. It's mind blowing, and the temple is spotless. But the whole idea behind it is that, the more that I am serving my fellow human, the more, basically, the more godlike I become. And it's like, it's proven to work. It's such a beautiful experience to feed other people. I love cooking for people. I love feeding people. And when it's in environments like that, with people who really need it, it's like there's deep joy and gratitude in people who don't have a lot, who are there to receive in a place
yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Many spiritual masters have said something akin to feed people and love them. That's all you need to do.
Spirit fingers. That's so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for summarizing the Bible and the Tao and the Upanishads and the Gita and every other one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Feed them and love them. Any other thoughts? Any final recommendations or bits of insight for our listeners?
Mm. Go gently. Go gently with yourself and with others. It's a tough time, and we are encouraging this to kindle spirit inside of you. We are not encouraging this to kindle divisiveness or criticism or judgment or separation. So if this information starts to build that in you, soften and be gentle.
Yeah.
I'm grateful to have the opportunity to share this, to speak to it.
Yeah, it feels just pertinent, and I'm grateful that we are in a place in our lives and we have a platform where we can speak to the things that we feel are really important. And it's my hope that this resonates with people and inspires them. For anybody that is inspired by what we have to say and they want to sit with us a little bit longer, or maybe get to know us in some different ways through some of the things that we have to offer, we do have a Patreon. That's patreon.com/C/creative spirit collaborative. And we have a lot of really cool things we're building in our community there. But I guess the only thing I really want to mention to everybody is that in times like these, I feel like every day I wake up and I am reminded of the value and importance of community right now, however it looks. And so if you are seeking community and you want support there, we would love to invite you to check out ours if maybe that feels right for you.
Yeah, we'd love to have you join the conversation in one of our groups or in some way. Catch us on social media, whatever. Yeah, bring your voice in.
Yeah, absolutely. And until then, keep bringing your ears, and we appreciate your your open mind, your open ears, and your open heart.
Thanks, everybody.